I took one of our inner circle members all the way from 0 to 50K cash profit per month within 3.5 months, all through pulling one simple lever. I'm now going to show you exactly what that lever was and how we implemented it in 6 steps so you can do the exact same thing. The lever that I'm talking about is pricing. Now, don't click off the video. I know that you thought I'm going to give you some magic wand, but to be fair, it doesn't exist. But I can guarantee you one thing. If you just listen and you implement this correctly, it will make you a lot more money. So let's get into it. So there are 6 parts to this that we have to understand properly in order to be able to price the right way so we can up our margins, up our revenue and the profits and make a lot more money therefore. Okay? The first part to this is the impression. Your pricing always gives off a certain impression. Now, to understand the type of impression that people get when you pitch it to them, you need to ask yourself, when you pitch somebody your price, when you pitch somebody your service and you talk about the cost, what does it signal to them? Truly ask yourself, does it signal low quality or does it signal high quality? I'll give you an example here. If you charge 10K per month and a net revenue share of 10%, that pricing will give a completely different signal to you only charging 5K per month with no revenue share. The reason being is because through the pricing, people assume 2 different things about your product. They assume the quality of it and they assume the incentives. These things are nothing that is spoken about clearly and communicated properly. These things take place subconsciously. If you charge 10K per month and a 10% net revenue share, the incentives are different. What are the incentives? So if you charge 10K per month compared to 5K per month, obviously people will assume that the 10K per month service is a lot higher quality than the 5K per month service. And in this market, everything is about making more money. So obviously people will assume that the 10K per month service will be bringing a lot more revenue and a lot more profits than the 5K a month service. But the underlying thing here is point number 2, the incentives. You as the business owner are incentivized to make your clients a lot more money. They, on the other hand, are incentivized to put in a lot more energy, effort, time, focus, and generally speaking, resources to actually make it work properly and make sure that the partnership comes out profitably and successful. And on the other hand, because you're charging a net revenue share, you are incentivized by the profits that the business owner makes, not the revenue. Now, I truly want to have you ask yourself, somebody that charges just 5K a month, what's their incentive? Like, what is their incentive to make it work? Their incentive is to make the client just enough money so that they continue paying the 5K. These things are not typically spoken about. They are subconsciously understood. Pricing always signals the quality of a product and it always has an incentive structure bound to it. Now, obviously, we just examined that raising your prices is the best thing you can do to bring up profitability and bring up scalability in your agency or B2B business. But how can you actually raise your prices? This is point number 3 that I want to cover, which is timing. Ask yourself, do you get any friction when you tell people what your price is? When you do have friction, you're probably very close to a value ceiling. But on the other hand, when there's no friction, you should literally double the price immediately. Truly ask yourself right here, what's the worst thing that can happen here? I'll give you an example about this. So the other day I heard about someone that was bragging about them having an 80% close rate. And I thought to myself, that doesn't make any sense. Because if you have an 80% close rate, is that you are criminally undercharging yourself. If you have an 80% close rate, you should double to triple your pricing immediately because there's no friction involved. And friction is important in the sales process because if you have the right amount of friction, you can charge the highest price possible, you get high quality clients, and you get less clients that pay you more. Point number 4. Pros and cons when raising your prices. Now, the 4th thing that we implemented was that we assessed the pros and cons of raising the prices of our partner within the inner circle. The pros were very clear, make more money, right? But the cons were that the pipeline would be cleared out. Now, why would that happen? Whenever you raise your prices, you have to announce the price bump with a timeline. So you would call people, you would text people, you would market on your story in socials, for example, that there is a price bump that's going to come up and that it's going to come up within the next 2 weeks, as an example. So let's say you have a 10K product and you want to raise that product to 15K and you want to do that within 2 weeks. You would have to market, I'm going to be raising the pricing from 10K to 15K within 2 weeks, and you do that everywhere you can. Now, what's going to happen is that the old prospects within your pipeline will be very opposed to paying the new price, because obviously they will be thinking, why would I pay 15K? I was offered 10K and I didn't take action, and now I should pay 15K. It feels like a punishment to them. So truly ask yourself, are they going to feel good about buying a product for 15K that they could have bought for 10K? No, they won't. But why is that? It's because of the anchor bias. If it feels like punishment to them, they won't buy. So what you have to do to still get your old pipeline across the point for you to acquire them is you have to give them a deal. You have to tell them, hey, you're still gonna get it for the old price. That way you can convert the old leads in the pipeline and you have a fresh start in a new pipeline with all the new leads that come in that don't have that anchor bias, and you can simply run your business the way you ran it before. And that brings us to topic number 5. And this topic, I think lots of people haven't even considered ever before. And the reason being is because it's not really spoken about. What I'm talking about is supply chain. I'll give you an example here. When COVID happened, the supply chain costs for you to ship anything from China tripled to quadrupled in some instances. Obviously dependent on where it was shipped from, the type of containers, etc., etc. But generally speaking, prices increased by a lot for shipping during COVID. Now, what did the businesses do? The businesses obviously didn't make less money. The businesses just handed off the costs to the consumer. And it's the same thing that counts for any B2B business or any agency. And that's also a reason for you to raise your price. Let me explain. When there are election cycles around in the US, what happens is cost per leads on the Meta Ads platform are very volatile. And the reason being is because during elections, there are billions and billions and billions of dollars that are being pumped into Meta Ads. Now, Meta is an auction, as you know, which means that your cost per lead, because you're not running election or politics ads, will go through the roof when the US government pumps that much money into advertising for the election. So what do? When your cost per lead skyrockets because of an election cycle, you just raise your price to the point where you profit the same amount. So you hand off the costs to the client, to the consumer. The smartest thing that you can do there is fluid pricing. So what big organizations usually do is they will have fluid pricing during times of elections, which means that they will always assess yesterday's data on how much the leads were, how much their CPA, which is cost per acquisition, was, and in accordance to that on a daily or weekly basis, they would change their pricing in a fluid way. That way, they would always profit the same amount of money and again, hand over the costs to the consumer. On to point number 6. The last thing that we implemented with our Inner Circle partner in order to scale him from 0 all the way to 50K per month was that we made sure to understand value ceilings. As we were talking about before, when you raise your prices, the way in which you know what point to raise your prices to is when you experience value ceilings, which means that you start to experience a lot of friction at a certain price point, which means that you can only do 2 things about this. Either you have a problem in communicating the value that's there for the customer or client effectively, so that if you were able to communicate it more clearly, the perceived value that they have matches the actual value and they would get across, or the actual discrepancy between the price you charge and the value just isn't big enough. And that's what will usually come up when you hit a value ceiling. Now, when you hit a value ceiling, you shouldn't focus on bringing the prices down by a lot just to get back up to the amount of consumers or customers that you were acquiring before. What you should be doing instead is you should focus on the LTV of the client, on the lifetime value. So you have to install back-end offers and upsells to make sure that you increase revenue and profits without changing anything about pricing or the targeting that you have for your audience. So what you want to implement is a supplementary product that is perceptually separate. For example, if you go to a steakhouse and they sell you, let's say, an $80 steak, What they will do is usually, sometimes, they will sell you on an extra $19 for truffle butter. Now, to you, the consumer, you think, okay, I just paid $80 for my steak and I paid $19 for my butter. But the steakhouse sees it as if they just increased the price for the steak from $80 to $100, which, by the way, basically means that they just increased their margins by 20%. And that's really the power of implementing a supplementary product that is perceptually separate to the main one. And keep in mind that you should always do that whenever you hit a value ceiling. So that's it. That was exactly what we did with one of our Inner Circle partners to scale them from 0 all the way to 50K cash profit per month within 3.5 months. We adjusted the pricing, we went through the 6-step framework and adjusted everything that needs to be adjusted pricing wise so that we could offer high ticket prices to the highest quality people and increase profitability as well as scalability in their business. Don't only listen to what I'm saying, but also make sure to implement this. It's the most important part to all of this. If you have any questions, please make sure to drop it in the comments down below. If you did find value as well, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.